Austria, the 11th round of the 2024 Formula One World Championship. Ferrari continues to struggle with adaptation issues already highlighted in Spain on Friday. Despite last week's updates, the red car is disappointing, as a step forward was expected but has not arrived. Today, we can clearly state that the SF-24 car is the fourth fastest in Spielberg. There was only one practice session in the morning, which certainly did not help. The base setup of the SF-24 did not work at all, exactly as it did last weekend. Charles Leclerc complained about a significant lack of mechanical grip at low speeds, turn 1, but especially turn 3. The Monegasque driver returned to the pits to vary the setup on several fronts. He adjusted the ride heights by acting on the front third element, also lowering the stiffness of the car by one step. There was an improvement, but it was not enough to solve the problems. There is also the issue with the power unit, mainly related to aerodynamic efficiency. This technical aspect does not allow the two Ferraris to gain on the straights in an attempt to somehow compensate for the gap in the corners. Overall, the rear was a bit too light once again. Both drivers were forced to make several corrections. The balance in the fast section was quite good, but as we will see later, not effective. The rear end is becoming a problem also because, as Carlos Sainz mentioned, the car tends to be excessively front-heavy. The RB20 is once again on pole position, but it was not an extremely easy day for Red Bull either. In the first runs, Max Verstappen complained about uncomfortable handling on the bumps of the track, such as the multiple curbs that need to be climbed to widen the racing line. One of their strengths is certainly traction. In this first part of the 2024 Formula One Championship, the reigning world champion team builds the lap in the cornering exit phase, struggling to have much stability on entry. Overall, their strength is high to low balance. In other words, Red Bull has a sufficiently broad setup range that allows them to achieve a good setup in the two macro areas of the track, the fast and the slow sections. This is a characteristic also shared by McLaren, which somehow always manages to find a window in which the MCL-38 car works well. Red Bull has a wide operating range, and today they did what Ferrari wanted to do, exploit their strengths. The prancing horse, in trying to favor the exit, penalized the corner entry too much. Summing up the overall balance of the corner, they lost precious time. This is exactly how McLaren managed to take the best time from Max Verstappen in the central sector. The SF-24 falls short in this point compared to both cars. The RB20 has more downforce, as we analyzed yesterday. For this reason, it gains in the cornering phase. Ferrari, on the other hand, tried not to reduce the downforce too much, but from turn 6 onwards, there are many areas where they lost performance. The Ferrari drivers tried not to lift off the throttle too much to carry more speed through the corners. This practice might provide a slight gain, but today the gap to Red Bull increased steadily. The SF-24 is the slowest car among the three in turns 6 and 7. As last year, the Ferrari drivers were forced to delay hitting the accelerator, significantly penalizing the subsequent corners. In Sector 3, the gap to the poleman increased constantly, losing more than 0.2 seconds. Overall, Carlos Sainz's fifth place is the result of several factors. A mechanical setup that did not pay off because no benefit came in the fast sections. The rear was generally unstable on exit, limiting performance. A lack of downforce was necessary to compensate for lower top speeds, a characteristic of a less efficient car. It is clear how the range of the setup is short, making it difficult to hit the car's operating window. The 4.318-kilometer Red Bull Ring in Spielberg is very technical, so the car matters, but also the lines a driver can take based on how they exploit the car at their disposal. The first sector has only the first corner, and it is here that McLaren optimizes the exit phase very well, continuing to gain up to turn 2. At turn 3, Max Verstappen does better on braking, but in traction, the MCL-38 cars make the difference again. Sacrificing entry to favor the exit made the difference for them, contrary to what happened with the Italian cars. Red Bull, during free practice 1, worked a lot on the second sector. They did this because Max Verstappen was losing too much in the entry to turn 4, a corner with significant negative banking. Throughout the traction phase of turn 5, Lando Norris gained ground, carrying a lot of speed towards turn 6, while at turn 7, the Dutchman dominated again, managing to go faster through this section towards the last part of the track. Between turns 9 and 10, the world champion exited very well. Max Verstappen could even improve performance in the last corner, where he made a bigger difference last year. Carlos Sainz will therefore start the Austrian sprint race from 5th place and Charles Leclerc from 10th. There are two different aspects in the analysis of Ferrari's difficult Friday at the Red Bull Ring, which ended with a result far from expectations. The most striking case concerns Charles Leclerc, who ended up with 0 flying laps at the end of SQ3. While he was in the queue formed at the exit of the pit lane 2 minutes before the end of the session, the Monegasque found himself with the engine off at a moment when the countdown to the checkered flag allowed no room for unforeseen events. The Monegasque driver managed to restart the power unit, but even though he completed the outlap very quickly, he did not manage to cross the finish line before the end of the session. No time set, so therefore 10th place on the grid. When the engine shut down, there was a frantic initial exchange between Charles Leclerc and his race engineer Brian Buzzi. At that point, Charles Leclerc was asked to remain silent with a clear message. We'll talk about it later in the box. The peculiarity of the incident that happened to Charles Leclerc is due precisely to the malfunction of the system that should prevent these situations. It went slightly better for Carlos Sainz, who completed the sprint qualifying session without any issues. The 5th fastest time, also helped by Lewis Hamilton's mistake in Q1 that damaged the floor of the Mercedes, reflects the potential of the SF-24 single-seater, which, like in Barcelona, has started bouncing again on the fast corners. The term bouncing seemed destined to disappear from Formula One, a word that characterized 2022 and the first half of the 2023 championship. But at Ferrari, it has suddenly and mysteriously become relevant again. Carlos Sainz had already mentioned it ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix weekend, but everything seemed tied to the characteristics of the Catalunya circuit, and there, Ferrari had hoped to have left the problem behind. The outcome at Spielberg has differed from hopes Ferrari ahead of the weekend, with the SF-24 experiencing bouncing issues in both turn 6 and the 9-10 sequence, a problem particularly noted by Carlos Sainz. He felt that he had done 3 very clean laps, but noted that the car was not very comfortable on soft tires, as seen in the free practice sessions. He believed it was impossible to reach the top 3 positions, and the 5th-place finish matched their performance in the practice sessions. Charles Leclerc's comments were more concise, but aligned with Carlos Sainz's sentiments, stating that he could have done better than 10th place, but the car was not strong in terms of performance. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur acknowledged that the bouncing issue is detrimental and needs to be addressed. The French manager mentioned that this phenomenon, similar to what was experienced at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona in turns 7-9, could not be precisely quantified and was partly due to tire overheating. Carlos Sainz believed that the bouncing itself caused the overheating, which then affected the subsequent corners.